All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of lighting. We are going to do a little segment on shooting with one light. I'm going to walk you through kind of how to analyze how a modifier actually works versus how it's advertised. I'm going to walk you through about how we can turn a one light setup into a really beautiful one light setup. And we'll start sort of with the worst setup and show you why the promise of what modifiers do is hardly ever fulfilled. So I've got a very wonderful 100 centimeter, it's called the Deep Dish Rotalux by Elinchrom. Fantastic modifier with a light in it. And I've set it up the way that you would think you need to set it up. In other words, it's pointing directly at the model from a 45-degree angle. We have to do a 45-degree angle because otherwise the camera can't see it, right? If it's right in front of her, it's going to block her. So I think a lot of photographers have had this experience where they set up maybe one here and then another on the opposite side, and they take the picture and it looks like utter garbage. I've certainly had that experience, and I think it gets taught like this in a lot of places. So I'll show you what it looks like. Before I do, let me do my ambient light test like I promised. I'm going to take the trigger off. I'm going to take the shot. Almost no light at all coming in on my subject. That's going to be fine. I'm going to turn the trigger on and attach it again. And we'll take a picture that looks like utter garbage with apologies to beautiful Reagan. I don't think this one's going to end up in a modeling portfolio. There are several major things wrong with this. And I'll just walk you through first step. So let's have a look at what a modifier actually does and how it actually works. So we're going to bring in like a small, hard, not so great quality modifier, and I'm going to walk you through kind of how that works. So for now, we're going to wrap this out. Magnus is going to help me with that. And we're going to bring in that small modifier and a bare head. And Reagan, you can actually hang out offset while we do this. I won't have to bore you with these details. Thank you. This is our lovely little softbox. And I do use this to shoot with because it has its uses, but it's a really good example of what I want to walk you through. I'm going to put this to the side. Could I just have a reflector dish, Magnus? Perfect. So this is, now the brand doesn't really matter. I'm just telling you what I'm using. Thank you so much. Perfect. I'll lay that off to the side here. This is an Elinchrom ELB 500. You can look up videos about what it does, but the EL stands for Elinchrom, the B stands for battery, it has battery, and the 500 refers to its power in watt seconds. But we don't need to get into that because it's actually not important. The higher that number, the higher theoretically the power of the maximum flash that you can put out. And that's called the pack. This is called the head. So this attaches into the pack. There's also lights that are called mono heads. Magnus, would you grab me a mono head, please? Which have everything in one. I like the separateness of these two because this is very light. So when I put it into a modifier, perfect, yeah, thank you. That's a mono head. This is an Elinchrom 5. The battery, all the electronics, and the flash head are all in the same unit. It just gets a little bit heavier. Any brand that has mono heads, the mono heads are much heavier because everything is in this unit. So if you attach it to a modifier, put it up on a stand, gravity tends to win that fight. That's why I love these little heads. But none of this is going to be very important. If you have lights, I want you to use what you have. None of this matters when you're actually trying to get soft light. Thank you so much. So this is called the flash head. And I want you to have a really good view. I think you can see it from here. This little bit is the flash tube. Now, it doesn't matter this is an Elinchrom 1. Most lights, your Profoto, Godox, Elinchrom, Broncolor, whatever brand you want to name, has sort of a flash tube. And the light fires at like 1/120,000th of a second or different flash durations. That also doesn't really matter that much unless you're really getting into kind of crazy technical details, which I'm not going to do today. This lights up and flashes, as you would imagine. In fact, I'm going to show you. Magnus, would you please come and help me with this? If we plug that in there and turn it to low power, I'm going to show you what it looks like. Perfect. There we go. And he's going to hold this. There we go. And we're turning it on at the lowest power, please. I'm going to just take a picture of the front of it. And if you wouldn't mind holding it close to the backdrop here. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to take a picture of it. So anyone in the studio here with us, do not look directly at the flash head because it's going to be a blinding situation. 1 second. Perfect. Yeah, let's see. So on the screen here, you can see, wow, that's interesting. Is that the lowest power? Correct. Okay, perfect. 1 second, I'll do one more. Hold it like right up against the backdrop there. Perfect. Excellent. And you can see on the screen here that this flash tube lights up. This in the middle is actually the model lamp, which would be a light that's on so that it can help you sort of see your subject. With battery packs, I tend not to use the model lamp because it drains the battery, and they have a feature where it turns off really quickly to preserve the battery, and it's kind of more annoying than it is useful. But what's firing is that ring of light right now. Now, if I show you this like this, you can see that the light is also bouncing off the backdrop here. This flash tube, this is lighting up and it's bouncing off the backdrop. The reason is, if you imagine we just saw that this ring is what gets lit up with light, well, here's the thing about light. It works the way you think it does. I think there's so much of the photography industry, or I don't know, when I was learning, maybe it's not like this anymore, people would I got the sense that I was like being convinced to think that light is doing something else and what I know it does. If I'm, right, like if I'm now, my face is now where you saw that ring on the backdrop, I can with my eyes see part of the flash tube. If I can with my eyes see part of the flash tube, I know that some of the light will hit me. It's as simple as that. So right now, the light's going to go in every which direction, apart from directly behind this unit where you can't see the flash tube. But as soon as I turn it like this, and you can see the flash tube, you would have on your face as the viewer, this light hitting you. You can see the flash tube here. So that's how it works. It doesn't work some other way. There isn't some magic thing that anyone does to magically make light go only in one direction when it's only the flash tube like this. So what we do then is we put on a reflector dish to stop the light going backwards onto the backdrop by literally blocking it. So this gets attached like so. It's called a reflector. And now, when you look at the unit from behind, even if I have it like this, you don't have a direct line of sight from the flash tube. So I'll show you how that looks. We're going to do the exact same placement as before, and no light should be hitting the backdrop from that. There's a little hole for the umbrella. There might be some light that comes through there. Let's have a look. And voila, no light hitting the backdrop whatsoever. So we've now just blocked the light, and it's only going forward from this flash tube. And it's going to follow the shape of what this is doing, this dish. So if you can see it here, it's shaped a little bit like a dinner bowl, a plate, maybe a spoon. So it's the light is, I can just do this test, right? If I'm looking at it like this, if I angle it up, as soon as I see the flash bulb, I know I'm going to have hard light hitting my face. So now the light is splaying out, probably following this direction here, like that, like the shape of this. That's as simple as it is. It's intuitive And that is what happens. There isn't some other magic thing that happens. When we put this inside a modifier, I'll show you what happens. So we've taken the picture of the front of this. Thank you for that. And I'm going to have you hold this while I unceremoniously take off the front of this modifier. Now, when you go buy one of these for a lot of money, there's all sorts of exciting promises that are made about the magic of what's going to occur, how soft it's going to get. And when we put this inside a modifier, I'll show you what happens. So we've taken the picture of the front of this. Thank you for that. And I'm going to have you hold this while I unceremoniously take off the front of this modifier. Now, when you go buy one of these for a lot of money, there's all sorts of exciting promises that are made about the magic of what's going to occur, how soft it's going to get. And I don't think it's true. I'll just say that. Let's do the same test. Let's see what the light is doing inside of here. What we've now done is essentially brought in a dish like I just had, but made it a little bit bigger. So this is a very important step we're going to do. I'm going to have Magnus hold it. Again, I think we've solved the problem of it bouncing onto the background. And I'm going to take a picture again of the front of my modifier at low power. And I want you to see here how that looks. So if we analyze on the screen here, this might be a little too technical even for me, but you can see that the area here, I'll just use a pen as a pointer here, this area is getting much less light than what's coming out directly from the flash tube. Why is that? Because the flash tube is exposed directly to you, and only some of the light is going to hit the outside of this. It's like if you sprayed a hose of water from the back, most of the spray of water would still be coming directly towards you. The bits that are going off to the side, if you have one of those like misters, that's a funny word, like what is that called? Like a mist gun, like in the front? Sprayer attachment on your hose. Even if it would disperse the water a little bit, you have a big gaping opening through which most of the water is going to come. And then some of it is going to spray onto the edges, and then would, in this case, bounce back in the way light does, would bounce back onto you. But it's still, we've got this giant hot spot in the middle, a really hard, really strong piece of light right in the middle. The camera, it's completely blown out for where this bit is hitting you directly. So most of the light is coming through the middle. You have like a central column of light. If you imagine a flashlight through the back there, most of it is still going to be like a column of light in the middle. And then around the edges here, you can kind of see that. This is what's happening. We have a lot of light from the middle and only a little bit on the edges. So if you see the way this lights up versus how this lights up, when I put the flashlight into it, look how the middle is so bright and some of the light is bouncing onto these edges. I think you can see that, well, we're still not distributing the light perfectly through this modifier. So what they've come up with, which I think is not a bad idea, is this, what is it, octopus quadrupus thing, which I have worn as a silly hat. I will not publish the picture on social media. And they've done, and it's sort of a white fabric. You could use it as, I'll put that in there properly. Thank you for holding this, Magnus. Good. So now what this does, it's a semi-translucent piece of fabric, so some light will come through, but the idea is it blocks the majority of that hard light in the middle with the hope of inside here bouncing it back and getting it onto these edges. So let's see how that does. So I do this exercise with my modifiers to see what are they actually doing. So Magnus is heroically holding that light. Still, if you look at that image, we have a big area of hard light in the middle with, now compared to the previous shot, much more light in relation also going to these edges. So then they add, as the last part of this, this layer also of diffusion fabric. So diffusion means like to scatter the light. The idea is that the light would bounce around inside the modifier. So we've got the really hard part of the light. We have a bulb, any bulb, right? You put a light on any bulb. We've stopped it from hitting the background. Then we have that hard part in the center that's like a flashlight coming right through the middle. We've blocked that with that little disc that does some of it. And now we've put on the outer diffusion layer, which is now supposed to magically make this a completely even and soft light, and it doesn't, and I'll show you. When we take a picture of the front of that, we end up in this place. Let's see if we can show that more clearly. There we go. I'll do one more test here. I'm just going to bring my exposure down. There we go. A little bit more. It does a decent job. It does a decent job, but if you look at this image, you can actually see there's still a hard part right in the center there, and it's not completely even if we're looking at the front of that modifier. So even though there's all this gizmo going on, the reason, because you are, can I give you that? Thank you. Because you are pointing, you're kind of like pointing a flashlight right into the back of it, you're still gonna get a shaft of light, a column of light that shines directly through the front. Most of the light is still coming out of the modifier, sort of in a column right in the middle, and some of it is coming through on the edges, but it's not completely even. So there's several things we've done, but I want you to remember the column of hard light that comes through the middle. So if that makes sense, I'm going to move on to showing you kind of the first solution we have to this. So if you shoot with this, what you're going to get is a hotspot on the person's face. So a hotspot is a hard area of light that looks burnt out, and it's unflattering. It's the difference between a hotspot and a highlight. A highlight is something that gives the face shape. So you might have a highlight on top of the cheek if you have nice pronounced cheekbones. You might have highlights on your forehead, even up here. The difference between if they are a hotspot or a highlight is literally if they are flattering or not. A hotspot is going to look like the person's just run a marathon and you've put the hardest light you can imagine on them, and a highlight gives the face a lot of shape. If you have soft light, you're going to get beautiful, beautiful highlights. If you have hard, horrible light, you're going to get hotspots. So I'm going to get wrap out on this modifier, and we're going to bring in the 100 centimeter modifier that we were using earlier. Thank you so much. Good, and we'll swap that out. Yeah, Mike, you can hand that to me. Thank you. Perfect. So this is probably one of my favorite modifiers that I've ever used. It's great. We use it for everything. So I'll show you the inside of this one because it's a little bit different. There's a little innovation that we've done. So I'm going to take out, there's 2 layers of diffusion. Again, diffusion is a piece of fabric that is used to scatter the light. If you shine a light through a shower curtain, it gets much softer. You've probably seen that. Or your thin curtains on a window, you can diffuse that hard sunlight when it comes through. Same idea. So instead of the light coming through, shining like a torch through the background, we could put this on a stand actually to show the demonstration so you don't have to hold it. We have that same flash head mounted in a reverse angle. So it's pointing into the back. So immediately, we've gotten rid of that sort of column. Help me put that back in. That column of hard light that's coming like the flashlight right through the middle. So, thank you. Lovely. They spend all this time building this and then I just take it apart. Thank you. So, let's put that on a stand so I can show you the same demonstration that I did earlier. I'd like to see. So, if you imagine what happens when the flash tube goes off, it's pointing into the back. We're probably going to see a ring of light, the hardest part of which will be around here, with some of it on these surfaces. That's my theory right now. So let's, I'll take this off. There we go. I'll put those unceremoniously there. Let's try it. Take a picture of the front. Exactly as I thought. I want you to do this at home with your modifiers. I just look at this and I imagine the light traveling. It can't travel through solid objects. So the flash bulb is exposed to this part. We don't even need to look at it. I don't even need to crawl in here to see it because I know that when I take the picture there, I can see it's only hitting this part. So essentially, what we've got is a modifier that's now only bouncing the light in this shape. But we want it to be in the entire shape of the modifier. So we do have a little bit of light on these surfaces, but it's not spread out evenly just yet. So you can see why they designed it the way they did, because this inner baffle with the reverse mount, which is a thing you can get for Elinchrom modifiers and other modifiers too. You can mount the light inside and reverse. When this goes in, it is designed to, it's called a baffle diffusion, similar idea. Baffling why they have different names. We'll stick them in here. Clip it in. Let's do the same picture again. If you're following along at home, we're going to do a Dora the Explorer kind of thing and say, what do you think it's going to do? I think it's going to kind of start being a light that's this shape because it's catching some of that and diffusing, and still we're not going to have a lot of light bouncing off of these surfaces on the edge there. Let's see. There we go. That actually worked a little too well. I think that's crazy. So again, it's now taken all of that light, and what's happening inside of here is that the light's coming out of here, it's bouncing onto the back of this, it's bouncing around inside of here between the inside of this, bouncing back a little bit, most of it's still coming through the front, but it starts to be a little softer. What I love, and remember we talked about the light under the tree, as soon as you come out from the direct light from the sun and you go into that shade, what's happening is the light becomes completely random. It's moving around, it's bouncing around, it's kind of like jumping off all different surfaces. This, we're doing it in a little bit more of a controlled fashion, but the softness comes from the scattering of light as it bounces off the inside of this. Some of it passes through, some of it bounces back, and all around inside of this modifier. And that's when we start to have a much softer quality to the light. So, and we then add the outer diffusion layer, and I'll have Magnus, I'll start putting this on, but if I can have him help me just get these on for the sake of speed. Excellent. So this is the outer diffusion. Just as a note, diffusion layers, at least for Elinchrom, come in one-stop sizes, or one-stop thickness, which means that it's going to cut the light in half when you add the diffusion of the one-stop thick fabric. It's a little nugget there. Okay, perfect. So, did that fire? Yeah, you see we've lost a lot of the power of the light. As the light's bouncing around in there, you also lose photons. That's physics. I'm not going to get into that. So I'm going to Let's see, turn it up a little bit. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. And you can see we have an almost even, I would say there's a tiny bit more in the middle, but it's almost even, this modifier, in terms of the light that it's putting out. I will point out that it's still going to have a column of light right in the center there. That's probably going to be like a column of light just still coming through the middle. But we're already in a much softer place. Now, I don't want you to run out and buy a modifier because you actually don't need to. And I'm going to show you now why it doesn't really matter and why we can do this with even an ugly light. I just want to show you kind of what you get when you have the ideal situation, but it doesn't matter. Because if you remember, this is the exact setup I used to photograph that horrible picture of Reagan that she's never going to use in her portfolio. So even with this, you still don't have that beautiful quality of light where you step into the shade of the tree in open shade, because we're not using, we're kind of still relying just on a modifier. And I think in this class, I'm going to take you away from relying on a modifier completely in a way that we've never done before. So let's, oh, there's one other thing. There's one other thing I want to show you. If you remember, when we had this front fabric off, we had sort of a central piece of light coming through here and only a little bit of light bouncing off these edge portions. If I point the light, if you're, from where you're sitting as the viewer, if I'm pointing the light, if I position the light like this, which I call feathered, it's not pointing at you, it's pointing away from you, what happens is you're only being lit by these edges of the light that's bouncing off of these edges, which is the softest light. It's just the way it works. I had an assistant holding a light once. He happened to be standing in this part where he was just being lit by the edge of it, and I was like, that is such a beautiful light. What's the deal? And ever since then, feathering has been a thing. But there's another thing that happens, and if you've ever heard of feathering before, it's not necessarily been explained well by people, mostly me, as to why it's so effective. There's two things that happen as we bring the light from being pointed directly at you to being feathered. There's two things that happen. You're being lit by the light that bounces off of these edges. If you imagine being sprayed in the face by a hose, not a pleasant experience, even on a hot day. That's very unpleasant. It's like a direct, straight water in your face. If you have a sprayer hose, then it diffuses it a little bit, but there'll still be like a hard part of water that's coming right at you. If you step just off to the edges of where the little spray of light is, that can be like a pleasant mist. That's how I think about kind of what's coming out these edges of the light, if we're taking that water analogy. There's a second thing that happens, which is the central column of light that's coming through here, which still exists even on this modifier, the hard part of the light. When I step to the side, or when you, as the subject, see it like this, we're wasting it. It's not hitting you at all. It's just coming out here, and it's not even hitting you, and that can minimize the hotspot as well. So even with an ugly light, we have that center part where the hotspot is, that's going to come out like a column or a beam of light in the middle, and around the edges you have that like spray mist water that's nice and refreshing versus the hard water to the face situation. Let's show you, I'm going to bring Reagan back in, our lovely model. Come on in, Reagan, please. Show you, I'm going to bring Reagan back in, our lovely model. Come on in, Reagan, please. Have a seat here. I'll bring this out a little bit on this Apple Box constellation. I'll move this out of the way. Perfect. So if we take that into practice, what I'm going to do is what happens if we just have her on the edge of the light. And there's two things I have to do. So first I'm going to show you the first part, and it's not going to be that effective because the truth is feathering is about two factors that come into play, both the column and the edge of that hard light. Imagine, yeah, I'll show you. So you bring this in here. I want the bottom to be about chin height. I like that because no client I've ever met wants more light from under the chin. So I'm not going to have any of the light below the chin because that's going to light up the chin. I don't know. I've never met a client that no one wants the bottom of their chin lit. So the bottom of this can be about chin height. Where we were at before is I was pointing it directly at Regan. And just for the sake of having the measurement, I'm going to tell you the distance right now. Sorry, almost dropped it there. We're about 3 feet from our model in this. She's sitting about, let's see. She's also sitting about 2.5 feet from the backdrop, and it's pointed directly at her. So let's start there again. I'm just going to do this because I know it's trained on her, is it? Let me try that. Hang on. Lovely. Good. We take a test shot. Lovely. It's really way underexposed. So I have a mantra. If it's too dark, I turn it up. I don't need to use a light meter because I can just turn up the light. The light is at its lowest power. You don't need to worry about the numbers on this. In fact, if you just turned it up and you were like, it's too bright, you're going to turn it down a little bit, and then if it's too dark, you just turn it back up. I give you permission. If the light is too dark, turn it up. If it's too bright, turn it down. We are not in the film world anymore. We're not shooting film. We can waste a frame or two just to test. I'm not going to teach light meter in this class because, frankly, we can just have a look at the camera and see what the result is. So I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to double, quadruple, for those who are technical, the amount of power that's coming out of this light. There we go. I think that's about right in terms of exposure. Of course, if I was being photographed like this, it would not look as nice, but you can see the shadow on the right side of Regan's face, camera left, is really hard. And these shadows, it just has that studio look. And that to me is kind of when we are not yet in the shade of that tree on a beautiful day outside. We want those shadows to be interesting. We want to have control of the shadows. We want the shape to have, the face to have shape. We don't want it to be so hard. If you put this in your portfolio, it will never match. If you're really shooting beautiful work in natural light, when you shoot this in the studio, it won't match. It won't bring your clients into that place where like, oh wow, this photographer's story is so beautiful in daylight, but then when they go into the studio, it just looks like a studio photograph. And that's what we want to avoid, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So we've got it pointing directly at her. Now, when I feather this, I lose the center column of light. It's now pointing about 2 feet past her, which we're going to get rid of some of that hard light. It's not going to change the quality of the light that much, but she's now being lit by these edges. Were you watching all of that as we were going through? Does it make sense? I always like to see if the model is getting it, then we know we're on the right track, because she's not a photographer, but she does. She is a professional in the photography industry as a model. So I've now got the central column of light completely wasted. I'm just shooting it out into thin air. She's just being lit by that little spray of light on the edges. I already know it's going to be too dark because she's now not getting the brunt of the light. So let's see how that looks. Lovely. It actually kind of looks nice. We do get a little bit more light on that side of her face. I think it's also because I moved this light over a little bit. That's just a habit. Let's go back to where we were. See how that is. Do one more. There we go. We also have less light on the background because I've wasted that central column of light. So this already starts to be a little bit better. I feel like it has a little bit of a cleaner quality. The difference between her and the background starts to be more even. But now we've got this scenario where we've got this central column of light. We're wasting all of this electricity on nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bounce surface on the other side. If we remember, we're under the tree, we had the light bouncing from all over the place. You know, it's bouncing off the floor, it's bouncing. So let's do the same thing and create a modifier, a second light on the opposite side using a V-flat. So I'll bring that in, and here, just hand it to me, please. Thank you. A V-flat is a board called Gator board in the US. Like you can use it, it's used like when you do a presentation, you know, like a triptych presentation of a science fair, you can buy these at framing stores. It's a little tricky to get internationally, but in Europe they use polystyrene boards with white on one side, black on the other side. In the US, we get these boards that are black on one side, white on the other side, and we tape them together in the center to form a V shape. And that is why they're called a V-flat, because they're also flat. So I'm going to put the white side of this towards our model. Let's do this like that. Perfect. And I'm going to put it exactly where that column of light is hitting this surface and then bouncing back at her. So I'll show you the difference that it makes immediately. And I'll put this frame up on the screen as a reference. There we go. And you can see immediately, if I zoom in here, the shadows are immediately filled in. So what's happening is most of the light, because she's close to this, right? Most of the light is hitting her directly as she's very close to it. Then the central column of light, which we're sort of wasting because we're not pointing it at her, is traveling over here to the V-flat and then traveling back to her. It's still, let's measure the distance just for fun. This is still about 4 feet from the model. So if you think about it, I don't want to get into ratios, she's about 2 feet actually from the edge of that modifier, and the light has to go 4 feet to here, sorry, no, further. 5.5 feet from this modifier to the surface, and then bounce back 4 feet. So it's traveling 2 feet, which is about 65 centimeters for the Europeans, and traveling about, how long was it? 5 feet and 4 feet, 9 feet. 5.5. 5.5 feet, and then 4 feet. 9.5 feet, about 3 meters from there to there. So the distance it has to travel from here to here versus how far it has to travel from here to here, I can use like a dial. I'll show you. All right, let's do another test shot just where we're at right now. Perfect. Nice. We have a little bit of that shadow being filled in. If I bring the V-flat in closer, that shadow, very subtly, is just going to start to be lifted even more. Beautiful. That's great. I'll pull up both images side by side, and you can see just how ever so subtly, just by that little movement, because the light has less far to travel. The light has less far to travel, so more of it's going to bounce back on her. So I'm going to do a little trick here. Let me take a picture of our bounce surface so you can see. I'll go a little wide angle. On this, get the V-flat in there. Reagan is sitting lovelily. And you can see here on this side of the image how this V-flat, most of the light's right in the middle here. It fades away as it goes here, and it fades away to the top. But this is such a beautiful light, the quality of the light right in here is what's bouncing back onto our subject. So if you remember, we took a picture of the front of the modifier, and it wasn't necessarily the most even. Well, here, it's so, well, I wouldn't say even, but it has a beautiful gradient. So it's going to be really flattering the way the light bounces back onto her. And that's exactly what's doing the filling in of the shadows right here, so subtly. So I'm always taking pictures of, well, what is my environment doing in terms of lighting the model? If I go right now where the model is, I'm going to show you the point of view that I see from the model's perspective, and I'm going to walk you through this again. We're going to do a little changeover for that, and I'm going to show you the other angle. Here we are on the reverse angle. You're seeing this now as the model would see it. So we've got our modifier. Instead of being pointed directly at you, it's feathered, and the central column is pointed directly at the V-flat over here. And then this is going to bounce the shadow very softly onto you, whereas this is going to be the source of the harder light onto our subject because it's closer to the subject. The light has further to travel from here to here back to you than it does from here just to the subject. So when I get stuck, I do two things. I photograph my light source and I photograph my bounce surfaces, and then I go where the subject is sitting and I just look. Because I found that the simplicity of light is it works the way it does when you look. If you have a flashlight, you know how the light, when you look at this flashlight, you know how it's going to come out the front. If I open this reflector or I close it, I can visualize as I'm looking at this how that light is coming out. It's not a mystery to me. The same thing is true for these modifiers. You can take a picture of the front and get a sense of how the light is coming out of them. If you're getting really a lot of hot spots, take a picture of the front, turn your power of your light really down so you can really see if there is a hot spot. I know with this light, we don't have that much of a hard hot spot, but some modifiers like the one I showed you at the beginning, the smaller one, does have a little bit of a hot spot. So if you're taking a picture and you're getting hot spots on your subject, this is a little exercise. I take a picture of the front of this, and then I'm going to go over to my bounce surface. I'm going to take a picture of that and see how the light is bouncing back onto her. I wanted you to see that from the point of view of the subject, and I would put myself in that position. I would excuse the model and ask if I could sit in the spot she's in, or she has a little break, and I'm just going to literally go, right, I see. I'm getting light below the chin because the bottom of this is below the chin. I'm getting, oh my God, the model is really close to this. Maybe I could move her away a little bit. Oh, this bounce is actually really far away. If I bring that in a little closer, I'm going to have more light coming in there. So it's a really great exercise, and it's something we're going to do throughout the class to kind of break down these lighting setups, and for you to be able to see when you get stuck in the studio. Try taking a picture of what's happening at the front of your modifier. Try taking a wide picture of your setup when you have your V-flat, and try going where your subject is and just having a look and see, oh, it's a really eye-opening experience when you actually go and see and stand where your subject is and see how the light is affecting them. There's another little exercise. If I'm here and I cover this eye and I can't see the front of the modifier with this eye, guess what? I'm not going to get any light from this modifier into this eye. It's very simple, but sometimes you don't really realize that until you go there. So when you are here, let's say I'm here, being lit by this modifier, and I've got no light in this eye at all, if I was to model, and I've got no catch light that's giving me life. If I cover my eye, I can very easily see, in my peripheral vision, I can't see this modifier. So if I was the model, or if I was the photographer directing the model, I would tell me, okay, why don't you just move back until you can see, without ruining your eye makeup, until you can see that modifier. As soon as you can see the modifier, it will light this side of the eye. So something as subtle as moving about half a foot is going to make such a huge difference. Then I'm also going to look at my bounce surface and see, it's actually not pointed in a way that it would catch this light, and that's all an exercise or things that I learned as I stepped into the spot where the subject is. Let's flip back to the other angle now and carry on the demonstration. All right, now we've got the other angle again. I'm looking at my model, and I'll do another test shot. Let's just see where that's at, and one more. Lovely. So we've got our light bouncing off the V-flat, and it actually kind of feels quite flattering. Reagan, without ruining your makeup, can you cover your left eye and just tell me, can you see the front of that modifier? Just nod if you can see it. You can see it with the other eye, right? Good. That tells me she's going to have a highlight or a catch light in that eye right there. Beautiful. So I want to just point out, this is like a one light setup, right? But actually it's a billion light setup, because we have, if you try to design a modifier that had the gradation that we have on that V-flat right there, it's impossible. It's so subtle, the way that the light falls off on this surface as we go down, and the bounce is so absolutely beautiful. And that's why I keep referring to the light under the tree. I want to show you actually in here, we have a flag somewhere. Perfect, look at that. Ask and it shall be delivered. I want to show you what happens when we only use the bounce surface and we cut the sun, this is our sun, and we're only using the bounce surface. So we kind of can take this out of the equation for her by just blocking it, and I'm going to use a flag, and just tell me when you can't see this modifier at all anymore. Okay, good. It's not going to be a beautiful photograph, but it's a good little exercise. I'll go and zoom in a little bit. So you can see this is just the bounce lighting up this side of her face. Magnus, take the flag away, and this is what it looks like when we add them both together. It's a lovely little way to analyze what's happening in this image. So again, if we're just using this, it's a nice way to analyze our bounce surface as well. And I actually want to make a little change to the V-flat, which I'm going to open it up and make it bigger. In the hopes of catching more of it. And I want to show you on the laptop here, this bounce that's coming in is really very, very sidey, and it's not bouncing into the other side of our model's face at all. By opening up the V-flat, I have now, I'll show you to the camera so you can see. I'm going to obviously turn it the other way, but now I'm going to make this giant bounce surface that will bounce back onto her. And let's see how that looks. It's always just easier to see how it looks than to imagine how it looks by taking a picture. Beautiful, that's also nice. Magnus, can I have you come in with that flag again? And I'm just gonna rely on feedback from Reagan again to tell me when you can't see the modifier. Yeah, good, good, good. So now we're still getting, let me turn up the shadows a little bit. I think we have a little bit of detail. Yeah, we're starting to get a little bit of light also bouncing into that other eye, and you can actually see a catch light in that eye from the V-flat. So that's a really lovely soft bounce. So let's compare how that was to before we had opened up the V-flat. And it's a subtle thing, doesn't make too much of a difference, but maybe it smooths out the shadows a little bit. At this point, we're probably splitting hairs. It's probably not necessary, but it's a nice thing to see. Okay, let me take a picture of my bounce surface just so I can see what's going on. I'm going to go in here. You're good, Magnus, thank you. And beautiful. There's a part in me that's like, my heart is it beats a little brighter when I see like this beautiful gradient that we have on this V-flat, this bounce coming back onto our subject really beautifully. Like it's just gorgeous to me. So we've made our one light setup into a billion light setup. Could never design an LED like this. I guess you could, but I don't know. I've never seen one that's like that. That bounces the light back so beautifully. Lovely. And we're already in a really, really nice place. So from here, as we are sort of relying on several things happening at the same time, our column is pointed into this V-flat. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to bring it back into the position we had it before. Is that it? Or this, maybe? Like that. Bring it in a little bit closer. Perfect. Just so I don't have to, the photography is the art of making a giant space feel small by putting lots of things in it. Beautiful. That's really nice. So we've got several things happening here. We've got this column bouncing into here, back onto her from this side. We've got her being lit probably by a little bit of that central column, but also by the light bouncing off of the inside, very nice and softly. There's light hitting the backdrop. So if you see, if you look at this image here on the screen, you can see the shadow starts right here. So I'm gonna, Reagan, you don't have to move for this, but I'm just gonna go and look where the shadow is. And if it starts right here, I can see that almost none of the modifier is hitting this, the back of this backdrop. So what I could do, if I wanted to have the light spread more out into the backdrop, is bring this out. I moved it about 6 inches this way. I'm still pointing the central column onto that, but I could probably afford to angle it in a little bit. It's still pointing here, so we're still going to get light back onto her. But if I go back to where I was here, now this is lighting the backdrop much more, and you'll see that effect when I take the picture. Not too much. Just makes a little bit of a change to the shadow behind her there. Good. So now if I make small changes here, it really changes the way all of this looks. And I'll tell you a little secret. I don't really very often shoot with this one light setup. It's a stopgap for me to show you kind of how I shoot. And if I really don't have a lot of space, if you only have, a wall on the other side and a little space like this, then this is great. It's not a one light setup. It's one light and this beautiful bounce surface. If you really want to split hairs, it's a 2 light setup, but it works really nicely. From here, I could make tiny changes, and I've done this exercise where I go into a studio. I recommend not doing this with family members. I have the luxury of having a very patient model here, but if you team up with another photographer and get in the studio and start doing the following exercise, what happens if I angle this down? Just a touch. Make a small change, take a test shot, slightly different look. What happens if I angle it up? I'm wasting the column upwards and sideways now. Slightly different look. The light changes on the backdrop. What happens if I feather it even more? Take a test shot. I'm making 1-inch adjustments at a time. I'm wasting that hot spot and I'm just getting little differences. I would recommend, rather than going out and buying any of this, trying it with the modifiers that you have at home. Get with another photographer or a very patient person who wants to be photographed. Do not use your pets or children. They do not want to be photographed. It is not a great experience for you. Team up with another photographer in your area, get in the studio and try this with every modifier that you own. Find out where that central hard column is. Do not go out and buy modifiers at this very moment. You can if you want. I'm not going to stop you, but you don't need to. Put a light in what you have. Let's do it with the ugliest modifier you have. If you waste that central column and you bounce back, you're going to make beautiful images. If you turn on the light, it's too dark, turn it up. If it's too bright, turn it down. It's a really foolproof method. Small changes, small adjustments make really big changes. So you can do this with, this is a very deep modifier. So the depth here is very deep. When I look at this, I can see, actually I could show you this. Yes, I could show you. Reagan, you can just hang out there. If I point this at these backdrops for you, and I take a picture, you should be able to see, I'm actually going to do it like this. There you go. You should be able to see the shape of the modifier sort of reflected or manifesting on the background. So if I move this out of the way, if we reference that photograph, we put it on the screen, the modifier is lighting an area about this size. That, and I'm not going to try to explain this specific modifier because I want you to do this with what you have at home. I'm going to look and say, if I'm here behind the modifier, no light can hit me. As soon as I start to be able to see the front of this, that's when some light can hit me. And if I imagine, I extrapolate this shape, okay, the light is going probably in this shape. Anywhere that the front of the modifier can be seen is where light is going to go. It really is as simple as that. So I want you to keep that in mind. So I'm going to just put this back in place. It's a really great exercise. I want you to just visualize where the light is going, find that central column, feather is to, instead of this, turn it like this, change the shape, play around with it. Remember that a light exists in 3 dimensions. It can go up, down. Let's see how it is. If we bring this up, we angle it in a little bit for you. Maybe we could get a little more fashion angle. Can you still see it in both eyes? Give me that test there. You can sort of see it, yeah? Perfect. And I know I'm going to get catch lights in the eyes. Lovely. Let's see how that is when we bring it in from higher. Also nice, we get more of a shadow underneath, more definition. The collarbones are also more defined. All of these things. If you have a subject that might be worried about double chins, when you come in from a little higher, it's a really nice way of maybe getting a little bit more shade under there. But I would be careful because if you go too high, you want to ask them, hey, can you still see the front of the modifier? Because as soon as they can't, their eyes are going to go pitch black. There's going to be no life, no catch light in the eyes. So, going to where the model is and just having a look. Reagan, I'll switch with you. If you go to the camera. Perfect, thank you. And I'm just going to do that exercise, take a picture of my surfaces, go here and just say, right, okay, the light's coming out of here. It's fairly high. So actually, if I want her to catch it, maybe the chin can come up. It's a good idea. This might actually, now that I'm looking at this, be slightly in the wrong place. I might go here, catch that, and I'm going to go where the model is and have a look, and I'm going to reclaim that hot spot that I'm wasting by having it bounce from here. I can use this to bring more or less bounce in. I can expand it to change that. It is an infinite possibility of things you can do with just one light. So I'm going to take this example of Reagan. I'm going to have you sit one more time, and we're going to expand on the idea of when she covers her eye. I'm going to show you a little bit unintuitive way that we can get more light coming in from the other side on her face. So please go ahead. Thank you. So we know where we're at here. If there's not enough light on this side of her nose, maybe I don't have access to a V-flat, there's another thing I can do. There's actually 2 things I can do. Without changing, let's go back to where we were earlier, just so we are in a safe place. Without changing the direction of the modifier, if you cover that eye, and yeah, exactly, she's doing it without ruining her makeup. You can still see it from the other eye, right? So I want her to nod if what happens as I move this in is you start to see more of this in that eye, okay? So you just nod when that happens, right? So her eye, this eye, you can put your hand down, this eye is now going to see more of the front of this modifier as I've moved it across. I've not changed the direction, because what people tend to do, and don't do this, if you have a lot of shadow here on this side, people tend to go and point it directly at the model again, which is just going to make you have that horrible hard light, and we're going to lose our ability to bounce off of this because it's now no longer pointing at our bounce surface, right? So I'll show you what that looks like. We lose a lot of the bounce, and it's also closer in. Let me adjust the power. It's too bright, so I'm just going to turn it down. We don't need to worry about the settings. It's not about the ratios. It's just too bright. I'm going to turn it down. So we lose some of that quality of the bounce of our light right there. So instead, I'm going to feather it, use my bounce surface to my advantage, waste the center column, and make a beautiful light. Oh, and the next part is so exciting. Okay. Lovely. That's so much more flattering because we're really using both of these. So that's achieved by just, instead of resisting the urge just to turn it onto our subject, keeping it pointed this way. And as this light comes across the front of her, more of that light will end up in that side of her eye. So let's try that again. I've moved it even closer. So her, what's that side? Right side, camera left side, will have even more light. You can see that. Magnus, could I have you come in and help me with this demonstration? Perfect. So what I'd like to do is, let's bring it in even more. Sorry, I actually get excited because I can show you this stuff. It's really great. Okay, it's almost covering her. And what I'm getting now is, well, that's actually too much because it's not even lighting that side. Perfect. So we have a lot of light on her right side, and we're going to move it back about 2 inches at a time. Perfect. And you can see how the light just starts to be more sidey as we go. That's perfect. Now we're too much. Good. So one of the ways to get more light on the opposite side is just to bring it across the front of the model a little bit more. I'm planting a little seed here because we're going to use this concept later on in the class. Right now,